Today's video, we're going to talk about the seed companies that are best to purchase from. Now, this list is by no means exhaustive, but I am going to go through like the big guys. And if you have seed companies you want me to review, then put those in the comments down below and I will include them in another video. So because this channel is dedicated to science, what I care about most is very specific categories in both their packaging and their online presence. So what I'm going to utilize to rate these seed companies is actually highly dependent on selection. So the varieties and GMO versus heirloom versus what they have. The second factor I'm going to determine if a seed company is worth going with is percent germination. This sounds bizarre, but it is incredibly important, and we'll get into why when we get to that section. 3 is price, because price ultimately does matter. So we're gonna use the seedling emoji to determine out of 5 what scale each one of these companies are on. Okay, so number 1 is McKenzie Seeds. I believe this is a solely Canadian company. However, they will send to Americans, and this is not a list specific to just Canada. I'm going to get into more American seed companies as well, but this one I think is particularly Canadian. So one of the factors actually that I didn't mention that will factor into whether or not you should buy it is the location of their seed harvesting. So this is important because the seeds and where they're harvested will give specific genetic or morphological expression. So what I mean by that is if a plant is grown in a colder climate, say a zone 3, what we tend to see is very specific physical representation in that parent plant. So the plants that do well in zone 3 will express and genetically multiply in zone 3. And you get the offspring of that, which is the seed. Now, if the plants are grown in California, zone 10, the genetic offspring and the physical expression of those plants is going to be specific to California zone 10, and therefore purchasing those and putting them in a zone 3 Canada, probably not as effective. Now, will this affect the rating? No. What it will affect is ultimately where I tell you where they're grown to help you determine if they're in and around the zone you're in to determine if they're best for your location. Now, this can be reversed, meaning if you were in California and you thought to yourself, I'm going to buy seeds from XYZ company in a zone 3, you could have the opposite effect. Those plants is grown in zone 3, while they may be better engineered for really specific moistures and temperatures that are cooler or less or higher, whatever the case is, bringing those into a zone 10, you're going to have the opposite effect. So you're actually going to have a plant that's going to struggle because it's not drought resistant or it's not resistant to high heats. So you can see kind of how picking seed companies within your area are important, ultimately speaking. So number 1 is McKenzie Seeds, and this is a Canadian company, meaning the seeds, the plants, everything are grown in Canada, and they actually have the motto the motto made for you with a big maple leaf on it, meaning it's made for those colder climates. So if you're in California, probably wouldn't get McKenzie Seeds because it's not going to do well where you are. If you're in northern US, you could probably get away with these bad boys. Selection is about 3 stars out of 5. They've got a wide selection. They don't have rare seeds or very unique seeds, but they have your basics, and they also have a little bit above the basics. Percent germination. They don't state this on the seed packaging anywhere, front or back, and therefore they're gonna get a 1 star out of 5. I haven't even really been able to find lot numbers on their seed packaging, and lot numbers in and of themselves would at least help you be able to compare to some form of a database that they have to determine the germination percentage of that lot. But I don't even see that indicated on the packaging. So they are going to get 1 out of 5. Their prices, so what I'm comparing this to is bush beans, which is kind of bottom of the barrel, most least expensive, but commonly purchased. And then I'm going to go for not exotic, but different tomato, which is the Brandy wine variety of tomato. The reason why I'm checking these 2 out is because I I can't go to the extreme of rare or exotic because we're going to get into seed companies that have a much larger selection. And unfortunately, not all these seed companies get exotic, and Mackenzie's is one of them. So the bush bean varieties, just your classic wax, are at the $2.49 per pack price range. So they're actually at the bottom of the range in regards to pricing. One of the cheapest, hands down. The next one is actually the Brandy wine tomatoes, and they come at $3.29, which is again one of the lowest. These guys are big, so they produce a lot of seeds, and they are in major box stores. So they are in like the Home Depots and the Walmarts and that sort of thing. So that's maybe why we see these lower prices, because they are applying to a very broad range of people, and their supply is much higher than that of some of the other companies we're about to speak about. Okay, the next one is West Coast Seeds. You guys knew that West Coast Seeds was going to be on this list because West Coast Seeds is one of my absolute favorite companies. However, they are flawed in some ways. They're not perfect. They're my preference. So West Coast Seeds, they are non-GMO, and they have a variety of heirlooms, and their varieties are large, but not as big as some of the companies coming up. So I will say selection-wise, they're a 4 out of 5. They're not the best, but they're not the worst. And they have a lot, but they're not all-inclusive. So they also make it very easy. And that's one of the things where I guess McKenzie Seeds could go down to even like a 3 out of 5. Is West Coast Seeds, they have indicators on their screens or on their website that help you very easily determine if it's heirloom, non-GMO, and untreated, which I appreciate. I find their website not to be clunky. I find it very easy to navigate, and you can even find some of your favorite influencers. They have an entire page dedicated to their top picks, me included, that you can utilize. So we're gonna give them a 4 out of 5. Plants, stars. Now the grow space for these is Vancouver, and I went on a trip last year, no, 2022. Me and my husband went on, Mr. Gardening Canada went on a trip, and we did the whole Vancouver, Victoria road trip. It was awesome, and we drove right by West Coast Seeds and their grow up along with their storefront, and we didn't even think to stop in. But when we were rolling by it, I thought, wow, that is so interesting to see their entire setup. I would have loved to have done a tour, and I should have done one, but they are in Vancouver, meaning they are in a zone. They're between Vancouver and Victoria, and they're in a space that is not obviously a zone 3 or the cooler prairie provinces. And so they're going to get 4 out of 5 stars if we were to put positioning into the determination of the seeds, meaning that these plants are not, or the offspring of these plants are not going to express the genetic coding that is ideal for our climate. So we may not get off to the greatest start when we would compare it to McKenzie Seeds, just based on where they are located. And I will put the zone that they are in here, and I'm thinking it's probably around a 9, a Canadian 9, 8 or 9, because of how tropical it felt when we went. Very, very warm. And trust me, as a redhead, I have like an internal heat sensor for this sort of stuff. Percent germination, 5 out of 5 stars, folks. 5 out of freaking 5 stars. I literally have West Coast Seeds everywhere. These guys, I don't know if you can see this. I will do a zoom up if you can. They have percent germination and a lot number. That is beautiful. That is perfect. That percent germination is so important when determining in the moment how many seeds to plant. So just to put this in perspective, how important seeing that percentage on the package is. So this one, the carrots, these guys, one of my favorite carrots to grow, is 96%. The reason why the percent matters is because, say I was growing peas and the peas said that the rated percentage was 80. That would mean out of every 10 seeds I plant, only 8 are going to germinate. So if we're speaking of planting our gardens in the sense of even a kitchen garden all the way to preserves and the future, that sort of thing, we would say to ourselves, okay, a tomato plant produces X volume of tomatoes, and I need X volume of tomatoes to get me into the new year. You can then determine I need 20 plants, which means I need 30 seeds. For example, this will help you save money, right? However, if that percent germination is not stated, you have no idea how much to plant. Because say the percent germination is 50% and you underplant those plants and now you're in a rush to restart them because you notice 2-3 weeks after you seeded everything that things are not growing or not populating, you're already behind. And now you're relying on greenhouses and nurseries and you're not getting the varieties you want. So that's why I find percent germination so important. And West Coast Seeds, in my experience, and my rant is almost done, I promise. My experience with West Coast Seed is it is accurate and it is incredibly truthful when it comes to what survives and what doesn't. So percent germination on the packaging, the convenience of that West Coast Seed A++++. I could give this factor 6 out of 5 stars, I would, because that is just how important it is to me and how important it should be to you. Okay, rant done. However, the downfall of this is that this sort of stuff does cost money. So the convenience of having a lot number combined with the germination percentage, because determining that does take time. It's quite a bit of work to determine that factor. The fact that the front tells you the particulars of the plant and then the back is incredibly descriptive, even gives you a measuring tape for depth, all that sort of. The amount of information on this packaging does make it more expensive. The pack for the Brandy wines is $4.19 Canadian, and the Bush Bean pack is $4.99 Canadian. So they are more expensive, and that is kind of where West Coast Seed falls a little bit low, is because of the cost to grow. It's very, very high compared to that of some of the other seeds that we see out there. The next one is OSC. So the reason I chose this one is because we see this online a lot. OSC, online seed company, is what it stands for. And we also see it in a lot of bougie retailers, such as like Lee Valley Tools, for example. And this is international, meaning it's, you know, Canadian, American, you name it. And OSC is 125 years. I had to read it from there. 125 years they've been growing seeds and doing their thing. They are grown mostly in Canada, and so therefore in the prairie area. So they are more designed for a colder climate in regards to phenotypes that they express and the offspring in which they make. I don't love their website. That's like number one. I do not love their website. I find it very clunky, hard to navigate. I find it difficult to kind of find what I need. And their selection is good on the basics, but I don't find them to have a lot of exotic. One bonus to their website and one bonus to their packaging is that they make it very clear what is untreated, what is GMO free, and what is heirloom. So those 3 factors are important to many of you who watch this channel, and they are very easily expressed on the website when you actually begin to scroll through it. It is like literal markers, and that I appreciate, but the rest of the website I find clunky. So when it comes to selection and website representation, I would give them like a 2 out of 5. Not my favorite for that. However, when it comes to selection of GMO and heirloom and untreated, they are probably higher than some. So maybe it up a little bit, but I'm gonna keep them up 2 out of 5 stars. Percent germination, I don't see that present on OSC, and I also don't see lot numbers stated on their packaging. Now, I may just, because I'm relying a little bit on the internet here, I just might not be on the physical photos. If you know that OSC has some form of lot number, please let me know down below. It'd be SKU or lot number. Either one of those 2 would work, but I don't see them to have that, and they do not have a central database for us to pop in a lot number or a SKU number, if those did exist, to determine rate, percent, day of harvest, percentage of germination, that sort of thing. So that is low on the level. I'm gonna give them 1 out of 5 plants, because that is one I'm just kind of like, ooh, that's not great. A lot of these other ones do have at least lot numbers, which is obviously beneficial. When it comes to pricing, these guys are good. They're around that Mackenzie seed range, and bush beans come up to $2.99, and the Brandy has also come up to $2.99 Canadian. So they're the exact same price, exact same volume as all the other ones. Because they have less information kind of on the seed packaging and on the internet, that would justify maybe those lower prices, half price in some cases of that of West Coast Seeds. So pricing, we're gonna give them 5 out of 5 stars because I find those prices to be reasonable. The next one is M.I. Gardener. So M.I. Gardener, if you guys do not know, is the literal YouTube channel M.I. Gardener. I can't remember what his name is. He's great. He has great content. I find it to be very science-based and factual, and he seems like a very kind man. Now he's in Michigan, I believe. Michigan would be the zone that this is located, and while it's not warm, it's not overly cold. However, I would say phenotypic wise, the plants represented in the offspring of said plants would be kind of in and around the acceptable range of something that could be grown in Canada if you decide to get your hands on the packaging. So that I think would be okay. And if I was to rate that in regards to cold climate gardening, I'd probably give it like a 4 out of 5. It's pretty much in line with what you would be growing. It actually be more in line than that of West Coast Seeds. So something to keep in mind there. They do have a really good selection. They have a lot of different categories. A lot of other websites have vegetables, flowers, and then garden tools. It's kind of like the 3 big ones. These guys have all different types. They have so many different categories. I can't remember where there's like tomatoes, and they really break things down, which can be beneficial if you're looking for something very specific or if you want to browse, which is what I like to do. I don't like to browse by vegetable. If I'm going to click category tomato, I want to be able to browse all the different types of tomatoes, and I want pages and pages of it, very unique varieties, and M.I. Gardener does seem to supply that. So I'm gonna give them a 4 to 5. They're not the best on this list for selection, but they are up there in regards to selection options. Next one is they do have a SKU. So they have a SKU number, not a lot number, but they're the same thing. The SKU numbers don't give you any central tracking base, so I didn't see any database where I could check the SKU and then determine percent germination, that sort of thing. It's probably more likely if someone called in and they said, hey, I'm having issues with the seeds, they'd ask you for the SKU number, and then they would, long-term track potential issues. It's probably more for their R&D side than for your benefit. So that one, I'm going to give it 2 out of 5 plants. 2, because they have it and they may be able to say, hey, yeah, that SKU has an issue, but it's not convenient for you to utilize in regards to determining how many plants or how many seeds you should plant. When it comes to pricing, they are $2 USD for Brandy's and they're $2 USD for bush beans. So do with that information what you will. Okay, the next one is actually Baker's Creek. So Baker's Creek is rareseeds.com. This is they got an Instagram channel. They're pretty Instagram famous if you ask me, and they've got the craziest selection possible. So they are getting 6 out of 5 stars for selection. Not only do they have the basics, they have the most bizarre, the most unique. They're constantly adding new varieties, and the selection is off the charts. Their website is also like a 6 out of 5 stars. Not only is everything clearly labeled, but the photos are just popping. They make me want to buy the entire website. So that, the website presentation, the presentation on the packaging, you name it, beautifully well done. I love it. They don't have percent germination, but they do have lot numbers, and those lot numbers do not reference a central database in which you can find out percent germination. So I like it, but I don't love it. And so that is going to get the 2 out of 5 stars that the rest of them got, because I would love the convenience of at least being able to take that lot number, plug it into a website to help me determine how many seeds I need to grow to meet my needs for that year. So unfortunately, because of that lack of database or the lack of information, they're only going to get 2 out of 5 stars for that. But it seems like it's a pretty prevalent industry standard, besides that of West Coast Seeds, which is stepping up the bar. So these are done in Mansfield, and therefore they're kind of in that kind of West or M.I. Gardener type range. They're great for you know, pretty much any scenario. They're not particularly Californian and hot, but they're not particularly cold either. And so therefore, phenotypically, expression-wise, they probably would fall and work in any area. They won't be particularly good in cold climates. They won't be particularly good in hot climates, but they will meet the needs of what you're trying to grow, especially in an annual plant position, either floral or vegetable wise. Okay, the price point. So these are a little bit more expensive than MI Gardener, and the reason for that is because these guys do put a lot of effort into the presentation of the packaging. They put a lot of effort into the presentation of the website. They put a lot of effort into diversifying and increasing varieties in which they do supply, particularly varieties that they diversify and supply specific to where they're growing, which is, you know, not particularly warm, but they do grow quite exotic fruits and vegetables. So because of that, their prices are a little bit higher, and that's why they maybe are able to justify those higher price ranges. So the Brandy wines are at the $3 USD range, and the bush beans, I'm shocked by this, but they're $4 USD. So I'll put the Canadian conversions here, but ultimately speaking, they're a little bit more on the pricey side, probably in and around that West Coast seed era. So West Coast seed maybe doesn't have the variety that they do, but they have the germination percentage. And then Rare Seeds has the variety representation, but not that percent germination representation. So it really depends on what you're going for. Are you going for variety? If your main focus is variety and you say, listen, I'm getting a pack of seeds, the whole packet is getting planted. I don't care if I'm over or under. I don't care. I'm planting all of them. Rare Seeds is probably the route to go. If you are particular in percent germination, so say you buy a package and you want to make sure 80% or 90% or 96% in the case of these carrots is germinated, then that may be something to consider. And what you want to look at in that case is actually the West Coast seeds, a percent germination. If you're just looking for cheap and basics, then I would absolutely go with like an OSC or a Mackenzie. And if you're looking for connection, so a connection to someone where you can watch their YouTube videos, you can watch the results of their video content, then MI Gardener may be the route you want to go. So that is my review of five-ish seed companies that you can grow with. What are your seed company choices and why? If you want me to review any other seed companies, let me know in the comments down below, and we may do a tier rank video depending on how many get listed out, because I'd be interested in seeing kind of where they all land on that. If you don't know what tier rank is, what are you doing with your life? Anyways, I want to thank you guys for watching. Comment down below if you have a seed company you love, and I will talk to you guys next time. Bye!